Call the meeting to order. Roll call, all people, members are present. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag, anyone?
With allegiance to the flag of the United States,
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Is there any changes or corrections?
There are none.
Okay. Council,
None I noted.
do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
A motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We have April 15th, 2020 regular meeting and April 13th, 2020 Board of Review and Equalization meeting. Are there any changes, corrections, clarification needed? I've got one spelling error on the Sauk Center City Council on the special meeting. And I can talk to Nikki about that. Otherwise, that's the only thing that I seen. Council have anything?
Nothing here, Warren.
Okay.
No.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 15th, 2020 and the April 13th Board of Review and Equalization meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Now it brings us to our public open forum. I don't think there's anyone else that is signed in that I know of. We have no public hearings. We'll move on to reports and presentations. The audited financial statements, Miranda.
All right, good evening. I'm Miranda Wetland, here with Clifton Larson Allen to present the results of the 2019 audit. You should have a packet in front of you, I believe, with my exit presentation. The agenda for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. First, I'll go through the audit required communications, then take a look at the audit results, and then lastly, we'll look at some of the key financial results for 2019. So starting on page 3, some of the required communications. As auditors, it's our responsibility to give an opinion on the fair presentation of the financial statements. We do that based on a risk-based audit approach. That means we don't look at every financial transaction that the city enters into during the year. We will focus on accounts that we consider to be more risky, that have significant balances or a significant number of transactions flowing through the account during the calendar year. We do look at internal controls, but we do not give an opinion on the effectiveness of those controls. We were on site the second week of March and issued the audited financial statements on April 3rd, which is a very quick turnaround. We had no changes from our preliminary audit plan, and field work went as planned. The city had all the information available for us, ready to be audited, and gave us the attention needed to pull the financial statements together very timely. We appreciate that. The significant accounting policies are outlined in Note 1 to the financial statements. There were no significant or unusual transactions noted for 2019. There were 4 new accounting standards issued by the Government Accounting Standards Board. We evaluated those standards and determined that they had no impact on the city's financial statements. So the financial statements will be very consistent from 2018 to 2019. No additional disclosures were required. Page 4, the financial statements do include management's estimates. Some of the more significant estimates include the of capital assets, the allowance for doubtful accounts, vacation and sick time accruals, net pension liability, and other post-employment benefits. We reviewed those estimates for management bias, noting none. All estimates appeared reasonable and were properly supported. We had no correcting entries or uncorrected misstatements as a result of our audit procedures. Page 5, we concluded that all disclosures were adequate, clear, and complete. There were no disagreements with management. Management provided us a representation letter indicating that they had reviewed the financial statements, and to their knowledge, the financial statements are complete and an accurate presentation of the city's financial position for 2019. There were no consultations with any independent accountants. Page 6. No major issues were discussed with management prior to our retention as auditors. We encountered no difficulties in performing the audit. And the audit is considered a group audit. The Sauk Center HRA and the Sauk Center Public Utility Commission financial statements do roll into the city's financial statements and are presented as discretely presented component units. Clifton Larson Allen audits both of those other entities. We had no concerns rolling those numbers into the city's financials. Page 7, looking at the audit results, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's the highest level of assurance we can provide as independent accountants. We had 2 recommendations as it related to our review on internal control. These recommendations are very consistent with other cities of similar size. The first relates to limited segregation of duties due to the small finance department. So it's something that council should be aware of and continue to do a detailed review of the financial information that is presented to you. We are relying on you as kind of a third set of eyes looking at the information. And the second one here related to internal controls over financial reporting. We are hired as part of the audit to also draft year-end financial statements. There's some risks associated with that in that because we're not there on a daily basis, we might miss a financial transaction that's significant to the city, may miss a significant disclosure. That risk is mitigated with Vicki and Jacqueline's detailed review of the financial statements. As part of the audit, we complete the legal compliance checklists that are issued by the State Auditor's Office. There's 7 different areas that we review. We have no findings noted during our review of legal compliance. Next, I'll take a few minutes and look at some of the financial results. Starting on slide 8 here, this first graph is the cash and investment balances as of 12/31/19. The first set of bars represents your general fund. The teal bar is the 2019 balance. So you'll see here that the cash balance as of 12/31/19 in your general fund totals $1,940,000, which is up $271,000 from the prior year, or 16%. That's due to 2 different reasons. One is some interfund borrowing was paid back in 2019, as well as that was offset by current year expenditures exceeding revenue. The second set of bars here represents all other governmental funds. You'll see cash came in at $10,253,000, which is about a $1 million increase from the prior year. As of the end of 2018, there was a significant receivable from Sauk Center Public Utilities for some street work that had been done in 2018. That balance was paid in 2019, so you'll see an increase in cash due to that. Page 9, looking at the fund balances, the orange bar represents the general fund in the first set of bars there. So general fund ending balance was $1,871,000. A measure of performance for your general fund is the number of months of expenditures that could be covered with your fund balance reserve. As of the end of 19, that was about 3.7 months, compared to about 4.5 in the prior year. We generally like to see that right around 5 months. Total expenditures in the general fund came in at $3.5 million for 2019. And total fund balance, looking at all of your funds together, you ended the year at $13,182,000. Page 10. This graph takes a look at your governmental revenues by category and compares the categories to the last 4 years. You'll see here that the largest source of revenue continues to be other revenues and reimbursements. That's reimbursements on capital projects from other governments. There's a $695,000 reimbursement in your debt service fund, and there's about $400,000 in hospital revenue, or revenues in your hospital fund. The second largest source of revenue is taxes. You'll see year over year the tax revenue has increased since 2016. And the second largest source of revenue, or third largest source of revenue, is intergovernmental revenues, coming in at $1,551,000, which is mostly your LGA funding. Page 11. We have two pie graphs here that represent total revenues. Total revenues for 2019, $7,790,000 compared to $7,553,000 the prior year. So overall, there was an increase of $237,000. All categories of revenue increased over prior year, except license and permits and other revenue. There's a slight decrease in those categories. Overall, there was an increase in revenue. Page 12. Looking at expenditures by category and comparing those categories to the last 5 years. The teal bar is the 2019 result. Total expenses, $7,868,000. Capital outlay continues to be the largest expenditure for the city. That was followed by public safety in 2019, coming in at $1,944,000. Page 13. You'll see here that 2019 expenditures were about $412,000 less than 18. There's significantly more capital outlays in 2018 than 19. In both years, capital outlay represents the largest source of expenditures. Some of the projects going on in 2019 consisted of the North End project and some other 2018 improvements that continued into 19. Page 14. So the city issued geo improvement bonds in 2018. In 2019, continued to spend down some of those bond proceeds. There was about $692,000 in bond spending in 2019, leaving an ending fund balance or unspent bond proceeds of $922,000 as of the end of 19. That'll roll into 2020 as projects continue. The financial statements and the OSA reporting form have both been submitted to the state auditor's office. The deadline for that is June 30th. So we're well ahead of that deadline. Your tax increment fund, no significant changes in operation. Revenues exceeded expenditures by $3,438. And the primary asset in that fund is land held for sale, valued at $920,000. Capital project fund, capital expenditures totaled $1,598,000. of which about $780,000 was reimbursed from the Public Utility Commission in 2019. So looking at the citywide change in position, expenditures exceeded revenue in 2019 by about $77,000, which is about 1% of total spending for the year, or only 0.58% of your total fund balance. So really break even for 2019 is a way of looking at it. Debt service funds, not a lot of change there. Payments were made in accordance with the debt schedule. Are there any questions on the audit results or the financial results for 2019?
Council, have any questions?
Here, Warren.
No.
Okay. There's no other questions, then thank you, Miranda.
Thank you.
Ambulance Department Quarterly Report. Kathy. Is she here?
Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm here.
Okay, she's
All right,
here.
thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for having me via Zoom. So I'm here for the first quarter report of 2020. So we started out with a bang already with 88 reports for January already, 16 no loads, 7 ALS transfers, 31 BLS transfers. That was a lot of transfers that month, and 34 medical calls for a total of 88 runs. We had 63 last year in January and 47 10 years ago. So of the 88 reports, 72 were billed out for a total of $91,139. February was a little bit slower than we had 57 total runs or activities, 7 no loads, 7 ALS transfers. And I think your report probably shows 7 BLS, but that was a misprint. It should be 14 BLS transfers. And then 29 medical calls. So 57 in February comparing to 62 last year and 57 10 years ago in the same month. And that was billed out, 50 billed out calls for $66,230. March, we had 17 no loads, 3 ALS transfers, 18 BLS transfers, 29 medical calls for a total of 67 runs or activities. And we had 63 last year and 40 10 years ago. So of those 63, 51 were billed out for a total of $7,253. So in your packet, you should see the rundown of the receiving facilities. Of course, Sauk Center and St. Cloud hospitals being the most predominant receiving hospitals for us. And we do still have many behavioral health transfers to outlying facilities. The majority of our no loads still remain vehicle crashes and falls. We did do a special detail talk at the Senior Center for Heart Healthy Month in February, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to cancel a couple of other special details. Mutual aid, we had 2 mutual aid calls in the first quarter. One was to respond for a medical in Melrose primary service area, so that receiving hospital was Melrose. And Paynesville requested us to take a transfer for them when they had a rig down. So we ended up going to Paynesville and transferring to Fargo Hospital. As far as the COVID-19 pandemic, we have transported several potential COVID-19 patients, but so far anybody that we have transported, their tests have come back negative. But as you know, we are hearing of more and more businesses and long-term care facilities in the area in our county with COVID outbreaks. So we've implemented COVID-19 interim guidelines for the EMTs. They must wear masks, gloves, and safety glasses on any call, and then add in gowns and shoe protectors when going into long-term care facilities. So like we'll see us responding in that gear now. It's more of a common thing for us to be more gowned up or more PPD'd up than any other time. So they'll also see us taking their temperatures more, and we're starting to put masks on the patients as well, no matter if they show COVID-19. What's the word I'm looking for?
Symptoms?
Symptoms. There we go. Thank you. So yeah, whether they show the symptoms or not, because a lot of times people are carriers and they're not aware of it. So And then we had received our self-loading cot in March, just as the governor implemented the secure in place order. So we had delayed the installation of that because of the training involved and not wanting to get together in big groups when it came to training. But we, looking ahead at the COVID situation and the thought of staff shortages and the possibility of needing to go down to 2-person crews, we decided to go ahead and get it installed. So that was just done. We had it brought back today, and we did a training in a smaller group with the trainer. And then the rest, those of us that trained today will now train the rest of the EMTs in smaller groups. So it is installed, ready for use. Grants, I've been applying for any grant that comes across for the COVID-19. We did receive $5,500 from the Minnesota Department of Health, and that can be used for equipment and wages. So that's going to be really helpful because we were going to go over our budget on wages this year already, because Tim and I had to put in extra hours getting the interim guidelines and securing the rigs, the compartment door between the cab and the patient compartment, and just many things that we have to do, and updating the interim guidelines constantly. And now the crews are using more time after calls to disinfect the rigs after the calls. So we're going to go over on wages. So it's nice that we can use that Minnesota Department of Health grant for wages as well as any equipment. And we've gotten 2 professional oral thermometers that we're implementing into the rigs. So those will be nice. We can use that on that grant. And I also have a oral thermometer and an ear thermometer inside the door, because the EMTs are now self-monitoring. Every day when they have a shift, they have to self-monitor themselves and take their temperature and answer a questionnaire if they have a cough or a fever, etc. So we've also received 30 gowns from the Minnesota Department of Health, surgical masks and face shields from the regional EMS, surgical masks from the EMSRB, and a grant from the CARES Provider Relief Fund, which I haven't done a lot of research on that yet, but it is for the use of prevention and anything needed for COVID-19. And we've got had a lot of community donations, and I'll have that list to the City Hall next week so that can go on the next City Council agenda for the acknowledgements on those. So any questions for me?
I see you use the Lucas a couple times.
Yeah, we have used the Lucas. We still have not had a long-term save, though. We've had a short-term one again, but nothing long-term so far. So
At least it's there.
yep, it's there.
Thank you.
Any other council members have questions? Okay, thank you, Kathy.
All right, thank you.
City engineer report. Keith?
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. You do have a update in your packet there. I'll just go briefly through it in chronological order. The 2018 project, the contractor was able to do some turf reinforcement, starter fertilizer, and enhancements the very end of April. So that was done to help with that, to get the turf more robustly established up there. Construction, there'll be some concrete repairs, those kinds of things will be occurring this month. And we'll be looking for a final wear course paving the end of May or early in June. So that's that project. The 2020 project, basically we're just kind of waiting for that to get started, if you will. The contracts are out and signed and completed. We're looking at sometime in July for that project to get started. We are working on easements for that project. We'll actually be next week, we'll be starting to meet with some folks. We think we can do so keeping social distancing and essentially keeping away from folks and being able to get some of their questions answered and signatures on some of those. We do have one property owner that so far we have not been able to contact or at this point, and one that we are working with has some questions on the assessment footages. So we're providing information and helping that landowner understand those things. So that's kind of where that is at. So I'll ask if you have any questions of me, or Chuck, maybe first, is there anything you want to add, Chuck?
Nope, that summed it up quite well, Keith.
Okay, then any questions from council?
Anyone have any questions for Keith or Chuck?
None here.
Okay.
None for me.
Keith, at one point we waited on the 10th Street and the arena parking lot until all the snow melted so we could see what kind of drainage was going on up there. Is
Yes.
that something that you need direction from the council yet in future meeting to proceed with that, or now that the snow is gone, that we can take a better look at it?
Right. We should probably take a better look at that, Mayor, and then ultimately council gives some action direction as to where you want to go and maybe what timelines you want to get started on that. I mean, that's kind of the ball's in your court kind of on those, but we certainly might want to just bring it up and have a discussion on it sometime in the near future. I think might be the first place to go from.
I know we set it aside, but we had also said we were going to do some more investigating as far as where the water flow and everything is once the snowbanks were gone. So
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure what the status was.
Yeah,
So,
I think we know where the water is flowing up there. We know now we've got some good information on the groundwater from the soils and the report from the soils. So I think we have a lot of information that allows us to decide if, where we want to go. I think, it's a big part of it is a financial decision on your part as a city. But it's probably best to just bring it back up and put it back on top of the pile and have a discussion about it and decide, what we want to do and maybe when we want to start tackling that.
okay. Council have any other questions or concerns? Okay. Thank you, Keith. And Chuck. Park Board report. Vicki?
So the park board met yesterday in regular session, and they did meet via Zoom, just like we are tonight. Some of the things they did was they set the rates for the kayak and paddleboard rentals. They set $5 an hour, $15 for a half day, or $25 for a full day. They are recommending to proceed with Browns Park improvements. That was the bathroom was in the budget for this year. And they're also working on updating the park inventory for a future master plan update. Our last park master plan was done in 2000. They did recommend some signage for the beach. The beach construction is almost ready to start. And we'll be looking at, we have to have the no lifeguard on duty type signs out there for liability purposes. As far as the campground, they're recommending that seasonal sites 40, 41, and 42, and those are the sites that back up to Hickman Drive up on top by the park maintenance building, that they revert to nightly, weekly through attrition. So if some seasonal up there does not return, they are recommending to convert those to nightly, weekly sites. And they're also recommending allowing the nightly, weekly renters to reschedule their reservations later into the year or to 2021 without penalty due to the COVID situation. They are going to recommend their tree planting incentive where ash trees were removed due to EAB. You'll recall when we did Ash Street, we did provide a cost share on new trees. They do recommend opening the splash pad consistent with the governor's stay-at-home order. They also recommend the concert in the park series continue if they're able to do that in the park, provided social distancing is acknowledged. And also they acknowledge the Arbor Day tree planting as part of the Tree City designation, which was I believe a maple tree that was planted down in the triangle here south of City Hall where the trees were removed. This is information only, and that was the end of their meeting.
Council have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to EDA report.
The EDA met today in a regular session. They did review the draft TIF plan for TIF District 1-13 for comment for the public hearing that you will be having at the council on June 3rd of 2020. The draft TIF plan was sent to the county and to the school district for comment, along with the maps and the budget for that plan. And what this draft TIF plan is for felling trailers for their new building they're going to construct on the old racetrack property. They also reviewed and are recommending 2 emergency loan fund loans upon receipt and review of additional required documents by the committee. The committee for the EDA is Joe and Jeannie Marthaler, and they would be looking at the documents that were submitted. And there was some things that were omitted or missing in the application, and if those come, then they're recommending those 2 emergency loans be issued. And they also preliminarily discussed a proposed new business that is proposing to come to town and the potential funding of a feasibility study for that business. And I apologize, I cannot give you any more details at this point. They're still in the very preliminary stages of developing that plan. And I have really for you on this information only tonight.
Nice try, Keith. He was trying to get hints, so. Council have any questions? Okay, public utility report.
This is part of the ongoing, the public utility will be sending a recap of their meetings that you can receive in yours. And this is actually from their April meeting because it was the day after our meeting, so you haven't met since then. They also met via Zoom, and they're saying that their audit was approved as ours was, or as ours is going to be shortly. They did discuss the COVID work schedule, and they're continuing to follow hours and shifts they've been doing, which they are rotating back and forth their people in order to get them into work, but yet keep them apart. Also, Justin Hendricks, he was the one that had the accident earlier this year, or maybe it was last fall. He has returned back to work in the electric department with no restrictions. They did get their 2019 drinking water report, which was presented to the commission, and they received an update on our street project. And also their 2019 reliability report showed that they had a high percentage for responses and low outages. So they had good. And so they had a good report. So that would be it for the public utility.
Any questions that we need to take back to the utilities the council has? Okay, we'll move on to action items. 7A, accept annual audited financial statement.
And this is simply the action for you to accept the audited financial statements that were presented a little bit ago by Miranda from Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay. Is there any concerns or questions? Otherwise, do I have a motion to accept the audited financial statement as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe, seconded by
Keith.
Keith. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7B, approve resolution 2020-36 awarding bid for crack filling.
So as you know, the city council had approved us going out for bids or quotes for a 2020 crack filling project, and it was in multiple streets in the city. And we did that, and we opened the bids on April 30th. And then in your packet, I did have the firm name and the bid amount. And since that time, we were able to go through them in more detail. We did find that Simply Surfacing, who happened to be the low bid, failed to bid all the items that were required. And so we are recommending to go with the second low bid, which is Midwest Asphalt Maintenance LLC. And so the action that we're requesting tonight, and that was the updated resolution I emailed you this afternoon, was to go with Midwest Asphalt Maintenance as the lowest qualified bidder, or responsible bidder, because they're the lowest that complied with the bidding specifications. And their bid was $16,836. Because of the bidding numbers that we were receiving, we are recommending that we also extend the contract to include 12th Street, Beltline Road to its westerly termination by Midwest Machinery, and also the the industrial park roads, Lincoln Road and Lincoln Loop. And they would be able to do that at the same cost per pound as they had bid for us. So we are recommending resolution 2020-36, accepting the bid for Midwest Asphalt Maintenance and authorizing the execution of the contract for this project. And Ben is on as well if he has anything to add.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2020-36?
Motion.
Okay, is that Heidi and Diane? Motion by Heidi, seconded by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approve resolution 2020-37 awarding bid for seal coating.
This is the second part of our Public Works maintenance projects for this year. We'll be following up on all the crack fill roads with seal coating. We as well opened those bids on April 30th, and we had 2 firms that bid. And Aztec was the lowest responsible bidder for that project. And the same as the crack filling, we're recommending that the project be expanded to include 12th Street from Beltline Road to its westerly termination, and also Lincoln Road and Lincoln Loop in the Sauk Center Industrial Park. And that resolution is presented as number 2020-37, accepting the bid and authorizing the execution of the contract for seal coating.
Questions, concerns? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2020-37?
Motion to approve. I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion by Joe, seconded by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7D, accept resignation from ambulance department.
Neil Rohde has submitted his resignation from the Sauk Center Ambulance Department effective April 21st. Kathy Struford is recommending acceptance of the resignation, and he did provide us with a positive exit interview. So he felt the department was working well. It just wasn't working for him in this stage of his life. So we're recommending you accept the resignation of Neil Rohde effective April 21st.
Questions or comments? Do I have a motion to accept the resignation of Neil Rohde?
So moved.
Motion by Keith. Do I have a second? Chair will second it. I'll second it.
Okay.
Motion by Keith, seconded by Warren. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7E, approved payment plan, liquor licenses.
I put this on the agenda because I would like the council to have a discussion and perhaps consider this. Our liquor licenses are set to renew on July 1st, and they generally have to have their funding or their check in here, and we would have it at the council meeting, the second meeting of May. So that's the next meeting you'll be considering these renewals. Given the situation that is happening right now with their inability to generate any income or minimal income, we have had a couple have asked us if we would consider a payment plan, and I have talked to other cities, and many of them are doing that. Our liquor license for on sale is $1,750. If they add off sale to that, it's another $100. Sunday is another $200. So it's approximately $200 for each of them. And we do have about 7 of them that this would, or 8 of them that this would impact. So I wanted to bring this to you to have a discussion to whether you would like to do, maybe divide it into 3, maybe they have a third of it due at the time of the renewal, and maybe a third of it give them 6 weeks, 2 months, and then a third following that. I wouldn't recommend going any further than maybe September to get the third payment in. We do want to do this during the months when they're most able to generate the income. So I'm going to throw it out there for your discussion at this point.
Comments?
What's the thought on prorating the license amount? Is that something we could discuss, or? I mean, they've been shut. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I haven't had any requests to prorate at all. This license is actually from July 1st of 2020 to July 1st of 2021.
Okay.
So if you're thinking of prorating from the prior license that we're in right now, that might be a different discussion.
Yeah.
Or it could be part of this. That's up to you. But I have had nobody request that.
I talked to one bar owner and then about this, and he was going to ask others. I don't know if he ever did or ever did get any discussion back from them. And I told him I would bring it up. They have been unable to sell. I believe it was St. Patrick's Day when it shut down. So that would be what, 3 months almost since they've been able to sell.
Was it in the March 18th or something? It was that everybody kind of shut down. So
2 months.
Be 2 months.
I did put this out on the clerk administrator chat room type situation that I'm a part of. And some of them were very favorable to prorating, and others said, as with any license, if you don't use it, it doesn't mean that you get a credit for it. So I've seen wide swings both directions about licensing in general, but I certainly understand their situation. So this is something that is in the council's power to do. If you choose to give a credit or something, or a reduction in this license because you're changing because of the fact that they couldn't work for 2 months, that's up to you.
I'm not totally in favor of the prorating this year's or taking it off of next year's. We're both, the council or the city and the bars, it wasn't either one of our faults that this happened.
Right.
What I'm thinking is, if we could split it next year's into 3 payments, have the first one in June, then we wait till the one in August, and then the last one in September. Divide it by 3, so you're looking at about $700 for each time. That way it gives them 2 months before they got to pay, and if they've got the money, they can actually pay it ahead if they want to in August. We don't have to wait for that September. But as of right now, I think that would work. June, hopefully they've got the money for the first third, and then they got 2 months of revenue coming in to be able to cover that second and third. And I think once everybody, if this goes away and they do open them up, I think they're all going to be able to make hay and be busy and make money already in the first night or first weekend. So depending on the restrictions. What's everyone else think?
Good idea, Warren. I'm all for it.
Heidi? You're thinking, I can tell.
I guess my only concern is we don't have control over the restrictions, so we can't guarantee that they'll be able to make that money up in July. We don't know what's going to happen in July. I mean, we would hope, I think the governor's moving in that direction, but what do we do in the instance that they're still, not able to do business as planned until August, or they don't get to have the street dance, or, I mean, there's so many questionables that affect those businesses that I don't want to guarantee. I want to make it as easy as possible to work with them, but I guess if they can't use it, then they can't use it, and then they just don't pay it. But I mean, if payment option is our easiest or most accommodating plan, then I'd go with that.
I think the council with the payment plan, we're working with them what we can, because we have too many unknowns out there. Yeah. And if it carries over into July on this break, I got a feeling that we probably are going to end up with 4 empty buildings anyway, because it's just going to shut them down because they're not going to survive on curbside right now. Because now that the weather's got nicer, a lot less people are going to grabbing food from them. From what I've been told by some of them, it's dropped dramatically since the temperatures went up. So if the governor drags this out any farther, I got a feeling we're going to see a lot more empty businesses. Mm-hmm. So in this meantime, we're going to be able to at least show that we're trying to work with them. But
I agree with that. Yeah.
I'm only one person, so.
I agree with the payment. Excuse me. I agree with the payment plan as proposed, with third down at the initial application, and then August and by the end of September. So I'm in agreement with that.
So am I, Warren.
Okay. Well, we're carrying the balance, so we're hoping in good faith that's what that they'll at least work with us on it. So you want a motion, Vicki, or how do you want to do this? It's just consideration.
Well, I would like a motion, because this is a deviation from our fee schedule.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted it tonight or if you wanted to do it when we come to renew the licenses next meeting.
I'd like to be able to tell them, to let them know.
Okay.
So
Okay. Do I have a motion from?
I'll make the motion that we get a third down at application, then the third in August, and the final third at the end of September, or by the end of September.
I'll second it, Warren.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or concerns? Call the question. All those in what? Go ahead.
No, I was just wondering if it's still closed down by August or September, do we revisit this then, or?
I think there's going to be a lot of things with this whole thing we're going to end up revisiting.
Okay.
In my opinion, I don't know for sure if that's how it's going to work, but you know, I think nobody in the state or in the country has been through this before.
No.
There's no certain line drawn in the sand telling us how to go about doing things. So I think everybody's flying by the seat of their pants as far as trying to keep things going.
Yeah.
So I got a feeling we are going to revisit something somewhere along the line. Are there any other concerns or questions? We have a motion and a second to make it a 3-payment plan, June, August, and September. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve small business emergency loans.
this is the emergency loans I was referring to in the EDA report. And the EDA is recommending the approval of the loans provided that we get the required documentation that Jeannie and Joe would review. And so what I'm looking here for is just for the council to kind of go with the EDA's recommendations. So if they bring in the required documents and they are reviewed by the committee, the EDA was comfortable with proceeding with that. And I would like the council to acknowledge that or approve that same recommendation. And we have 2 loans, so it would be $10,000 apiece.
Okay. Any questions or concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the recommendation of the EDA for the small business emergency loans?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Warren.
Okay, motion by Keith, seconded by Diane. Last minute concerns? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Unfinished business, deferment, special assessment on sewer service.
So at the April 15th council meeting, the council heard a request to eliminate a sewer service to a vacant lot where the owner has no intention of building or utilizing the service. The property is located at 518 Elm Street South and is part of the 2020 capital improvement project for the city. The council declined to eliminate the service from the plans for the project. However, they stated they would give consideration to deferring the assessment until a future date. So I do have in your packet an excerpt from the League of Minnesota Cities Special Assessment Toolkit regarding undeveloped property. So for undeveloped property, at the meeting where the council approves the assessment, they may levy the assessment but defer the first installment for unimproved property until a designated future year or until the platting of the property or till construction of improvements. So you could designate that maybe it gets paid, it's deferred until it's sold, it's deferred until they need to hook up, and there's a maximum term of 30 years. So there's certain ways where that could hit the end of the line. The council may set by resolution the terms, the conditions, and the standards and the criteria, and you must file that certificate with the county recorder. However, this action for this deferment wouldn't occur tonight. It would occur at the time of the assessment, which is probably going to happen in September or October of this year. So that's when you would actually take action on this. But I guess what I'm looking today is, is this something you would really consider? The property owner is interested to know if this is something that we would be looking at that time. So I'm just looking for you to say, It's the only one in the project that is a vacant lot that is buildable that the owner is requesting a deferral. So I just would like to get your input on that, and he's also in the meeting so he can hear what you say. And is this something you would consider? We have a few of them out there from prior years as well.
Okay. One thing, Chuck, can you shut off your audio? 'Cause
Yes, I can.
We're getting feedback.
All
You
right.
keep popping on the screen. Thank you. Okay, council, you heard what Vicky was saying. Is what kind of direction do you want to go with this?
My suggestion would be to defer it until it's cash sold.
Okay, I tend to say we defer it until it's sold or the 10-year assessment is up. So like the 11th year is when they're going to have to pay it. Rather than, because otherwise it could be 30 years before it's sold and we got that sitting on the books.
Right.
That's true.
So Joe or Heidi?
Yeah, Warren. I like that.
That's kind of the same line of thinking I had was, defer it for a certain number of years or until sold. So I think the 11th year is a good number there. So I'd agree with that.
Because the other assessments, if it goes out 10 years, they've got 10 years, that's all complete. They're only going to have that, what was it, $1,700 for that assessment to pay on the 11th year. So Heidi, what do you think?
I'm in agreement. I just want clarification. The recommendation then is to defer until developed, sold, or 11 years, whichever comes sooner.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Are you saying paid in full, or is that when we start the payment? Is that the first payment starts in the 11th year, or do they have to pay it in full in the 11th year?
As far as I'm concerned, it would be paid in full the 11th year.
Good.
So whatever we defer, they would have to pay in full on the 11th year. Because otherwise we'd be out another 5 to 10 years just getting that $1,700.
Yep. You're only looking at about $15 a month. It's not a big deal over that 10-year period.
Right.
You want a motion?
I believe the concern was, you add that on top of the other assessments, and then it does become, it's a quite a sum once you add them all together. Individually, it doesn't sound as much.
Right. And this is something we can't take action on until the assessment hearing, right?
That is correct. This is just you're letting me know and him know what you're thinking at this point, and that when we have the assessment hearing and the assessment adoption, there would be a resolution for the deferred assessment adoption at the same time.
Okay.
The one thing is if something could happen in their future that next year all of a sudden they decide they're going to sell that lot, well, at least we get paid for it.
Right.
On that part. So okay, we'll move on to new business. Summer community gatherings.
So the reason I have this on here is with everything with COVID going on, we need to start a discussion on how you feel about granting approvals for the summer gatherings. This is things like Sinclair Lewis Days, because we give permits for use of the park, we give permits for fireworks, we give permits for the street dance, we give permits for those types of things. And, is the council feel strongly we just don't want to have any of that this year? And so we want to give that direction up front. Do we want to wait a while? What are your thoughts on that? Stacy Michaels from the chamber is on, and you certainly have the opportunity to ask her questions about what the chamber is thinking. But I believe we probably need to be having those discussions with the chamber sooner rather than later. In addition, the bars conduct the street dance, not the chamber, so we should be having the discussion with representatives of the bars as well as to what our thoughts are on these summer gatherings that are coming up in not that far down the road, about 2 months.
Discussion.
I don't know what your thoughts are.
Would we be, I'm just a little scared if we do would we be on the hook for anything that we do reserve or go ahead and procure for this, and then all of a sudden we can't have it? That would be my biggest concern.
We addressed this last night at the park board meeting, and we felt that it's best to just go ahead and open it up and put the monkey on the governor's back. If he says no, we can't do it. If he says all right, well, we got everything in play to do it. They just have to address their social distancing. Of course,
I think part of the issue that we're having here is it's not a matter so much as it's not just allowing what the governor would allow. There's a funding aspect for this. A lot of the funding that's raised for these events is raised by people that can't be in business right now. And so even if we would allow it, it still may not happen simply from a funding perspective. But I think we just need to give the chamber and the other groups the direction. If the city council is just saying, if the governor will let us do it, we're going to do it, but we're not going to restrict it. And so that's kind of where we are. But if Stacy wants to speak, or if you want Stacy to give you your thoughts before you give any further direction, we can certainly unmute her and let her talk.
Yeah, let her talk.
Council okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Kind of fighting a back issue, so I've been fidgeting and kept my camera off. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I thought it would be a good time to have joined forces in the decision or some feedback. So far, the position of the chamber is we're really leaning toward cancellation. All of the communities around us, and I can't even get into the long list of communities that have already canceled and pulled the plug, because we're really only just over 2 months out. And we're nowhere close to where the governor shows his dials or the number of weeks between each of those times where he makes those changes or moves, where we can be beyond that, like 50 people in a gathering space. And at the very farthest right of the dial is festivals and concerts. And he's already said he doesn't see any concerts being held at stadiums or arenas or anything like that. So with all of the communities around us also having canceled, we also felt at this point, if we do hold something, we'll probably draw the whole state. You know what I mean? So not only do we have our normal crowds, but we're going to be the only ones having something. So we're going to have even increased attendance, I feel. I don't think it's a healthy decision, not only for our community, but for the financial status of the chamber or our chamber members. It's about a $60,000 event. $26,000 in donations come from our chamber members, half of which are shuttered completely, 25% that are working on a very limited basis. So that also causes further financial strain. And not to mention, there's really no way in a crowd that size to control social distancing. And then who's at fault if somebody does get sick? Or they say that all these people came in contact with each other while at the St. Clair Lewis Days Festival or the fireworks. Where does that leave us legally? So as a chamber, for the events the chamber hosts, we are having a meeting tomorrow, and we are strongly considering pulling the plug on everything and following suit with our neighboring communities.
Okay. Questions from the council? My opinion is the city's got to work with the chamber. But basically, the chamber hands us all the forms for permits and everything. And if they decide to pull the plug, there won't be any permits for us to act on anyway. So it's basically, if we say anything as far as what we're going to do, it's kind of like putting the cart in front of the horse. So if the chamber decides to pull the plug, we don't have any action to take on any of it. And with the bars, when they come with their permit and ask for theirs, that's when it's going to be our decision to decide yes or no, and based on, it could be another month yet before that happens, and things could totally change. Not to say that we won't support the chamber. I am not saying that. It's just that I don't think it's our decision to make before they make theirs. So,
Well, a lot of the communities that have canceled have had these same types of joint conversations with their city council and their mayors as well. And they came forward also to say that based on social distancing guidelines, that it wouldn't be possible to hold that facility in their public spaces because they don't even have church services yet. You know, even now they're opening up the churches and you can't have more than 10 people in a church here in the very near future. So they are kind of coming on board. And I guess another concern is too, so we cancel all this stuff, but then we have thousands of people cramming a 1-block space for the street dance. So then it brings it back to, you know, do we do a watered down festival? I mean, it's all these things that we really want to make sure we're making the best decision for our community as well as our businesses, but there's certainly a fiscal responsibility there too.
right.
But we just need, you know, just kind of looking for some support in that regard as well as to what the thoughts are. Like right now, if it was brought to you right now, if we were to turn in our, you know, parade permits and our new route, because we had to come up with a new route because of Elm Street road work, things like that, what would you do with it based on if that was brought to you right now? How would that be viewed? You know, so if that's on the table, what would be your you know, feedback or opinion?
Basically on the guidelines and everything, then at that point in time, we probably have to deny it. But, you know, like I'm only one person. I don't know what the rest of the council feels on that. But a month from now, it could be totally different. You know, we're already getting people back to work. Different things are happening all the time. So if it would happen tonight, yes. But I think the business community of the chamber is a larger voice than what the council is, and we would listen to what they have to say after they made their decision. Does anyone else have any comments?
I agree with you, Warren, on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, me as well. I think the chamber, they have a pulse on what they have their finger on the pulse of what's going to be doable and what isn't. And I guess all we can do is really recommend. And the scenario you put before us, you know, like if it was coming up, we'd have to deny it. You folks probably know how much time you need in advance to get your fireworks lined up, how much money you're going to need,
right?
Advertising, whatnot. In short, I think the council will go along with anything that's recommended from the chamber.
Yeah, we're kind of behind the ball at this point, you know, already. And our parade route would definitely need to be done and approved and all those permits right away, because normally by now we have all 100 registrations done and in, you know, so we would have even had everybody registered by now. And we don't even send out for that because of the state that we're in. So we need to move quickly, either to make it happen or to call it.
I know one of the things that Stearns County Fair is another issue that we don't have to worry about permits for, but they've informed me that they weren't going to make a decision until May 29th.
Okay. So it's kind of, and they're just a week after us.
Right. You know, and then they'll decide whether or not it's going to happen or not. But as of right now, they're planning on going ahead with it. And even if the state fair cancels, they're looking at possibly keep doing the fair irregardless, just to give some people something to do. So I'm looking at that aspect too. I just don't want to be the council that jumps in front of the cart and, you know, that puts the cart in front of the horse, I should say. And we got to work together, but we got to kind of do a timeline or a guidance thing. If the business community says they can't do it, they're not going to bring us any permits.
Right.
I don't want to be the guy that cancels summer in Sauk Center and then finds out a month later we could have added.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, so we're already
Right.
months behind for the pet. I mean, you can't pull it together in a month. So if all of a sudden 3 weeks beforehand they're like, oh yeah, we can have crowds of several thousand, then it's at that point a little too late. Like you can't pull a festival of that size together in just a few weeks. So, you know, if
I think Stacy, if the chamber pulls the plug, they inform the chamber, and I'm sure that the council are more likely, as far as me, will support your decision.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So, anything else from the council?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Time.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy.
Oh wait.
I just had one quick side thought about that. There's been a lot of talk about like conventions and things that happen. You know, there's like, I know I'm involved in one that it's a yearly convention and people coming in from all states it was supposed to be in the beginning of June. They pushed it out to September. Is there any hard fast rule that says we have to have any of these activities as scheduled right now, or is there an opportunity to possibly reschedule them for any point this year? Where if, say, in a month, we're looking at, 2 months from now, we're looking like things can be okay. Have they discussed that, or is that a possibility?
That was briefly discussed, and I wouldn't say that it is completely eliminated from an option. However, there's a lot of other festivals that have been already canceled through September around the state, and the direction that we're getting from the Minnesota Chamber executives and from the governor, it just makes it look like there's not going to be anything of large gatherings for the remainder of the year. So that just pushes off the inevitable, and our businesses won't have had time to recover in that amount of time. So it still kind of comes back to a financial thing at that point too. One, is it truly feasible that we'd be able to have that kind of social interactions, and the reduction in the social distancing guidelines is the first concern. And then the second would be, how would we pull that off with our businesses in dire situations that they're in right now as a result of the pandemic? So twofold at that point. So still kind of at that point would then come down to, how do you pull that together in a short amount of time with $60,000, for $60,000?
Okay. Well, does that answer your question, Heidi?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stacy.
Yep. Thank you again.
Nuisance ordinance enforcement.
This is just a little informational item. The city staff here and the mayor will be meeting with our new city attorney tomorrow via Zoom regarding our nuisance ordinance enforcement proceedings. And I did provide him some information on how we've been doing it in the past, and we will be able to talk about what is our best route for enforcement, whether it's civil, whether it's criminal, is the police involved, is it planning and zoning, and just kind of give us a fresh start on how we take care of those issues. Of course, now the grass is starting to green up, people are getting out in their yards, and we're getting complaints about neighbors not cleaning up. We try to give people a little chance in the spring to get it all done, to get to our scrap metal day, to get to the oil recycling. And but this will be our first Zoom meeting with our new city attorney to try to really get a handle on that. So we'll have a report at the next council meeting on how it went. I just wanted to let you know that we're on it. So we'll see where it goes. I have no action required. And Brian is coming on screen. He must have some comments.
Yeah, what time's that meeting? You remember what time that meeting is, Vicky?
8:30 tomorrow morning.
8:30. Okay.
Brian, I sent you the Zoom invite.
I know you did. Just checking. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions about that meeting tomorrow, or comments, or wait for our report back. Sounds like that's what you want to do. Okay, we'll go to consent agenda. We have schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $116,535.63. Paid claims of $2,835.58 for a total of $119,371.21. We have resolution 2020-38 accepting contributions of $2,000 from Walmart to be allocated to the fitness park and $750 from the Lions Club of Sauk Center for the outdoor skating rink. On behalf of the city, I want to acknowledge those contributions and thank them for those donations. And we have gambling application for exempt permit request from the Holy Family School for a raffle on September 4th, 2020 at Holy Family School. Do I have any questions or concerns about the consent calendar? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no informational items. This brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Keith?
Yeah.
Or Joe?
Keith.
Keith, okay. Call the
Keith.
question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.